Hello and welcome to this episode of Superhero Ethics. Friends, as many of you know, a couple of weeks ago we got the sad news that Carl Weathers had passed away. And Carl Weathers had been a really big part of a lot of the franchises that we talk about here on Superhero Ethics. He had a very long and storied career as an actor, as well as a football player before that. And because of the way he had kept showing up in different things we love, I wanted to get a couple of people together and talk about Carl Weathers and the acting that he had done and the role he'd played in different franchises we loved. And so I'm here with Paul Hoppe and Ashley Coffin to talk about Mr. Carl Weathers. So, Ashley, let me start with you. If you want to also introduce yourself for those who haven't heard you in a little bit, but you've been, for everyone who's been listening to these podcasts, Ashley is a very frequent guest. But Ashley, when you think of Carl Weathers, what is the first piece of media that you think of him in, or the first thing you saw him in?
So Carl Weathers, it's very interesting. So Carl Weathers was a huge deal for me growing up. First, because Predator was one of my absolute favorite movies. I used to watch it all the time. And secondly, I'm from Philadelphia, and very much like the Tooth Fairy or Santa Claus, you don't find out until much older that Rocky's just a movie. So we do everything we can to convince ourselves that that was a real person and a real story and full of real other people. So it is, just this hero who has always kind of been in my life throughout, being an 80s baby and such. But it's not just the movies. It's the best of the best movies that you rewatch through your entire lives. So yeah, I don't know. We do this in Philly. We just have this special connection with anyone who is involved with Rocky. It's kind of takes it to this other level.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about how much that connection is there until I saw the movie Trading Places as a kid, which also takes place largely in Philadelphia. And in the opening scene where they're establishing the famous sites of Philadelphia, they show the Liberty Bell, they show statues of Ben Franklin and other founding fathers, and they show a statue of Rocky Balboa, which in the third movie was erected in that city. So, Paul, what about yourself?
I'd seen things that Carl Weathers had been in. I'd seen Rocky. I'd seen a bunch of things. But it was really actually when he played himself on Arrested Development that I really came to appreciate him, particularly, especially as an actor. I think actors playing themselves, especially in a comic role, it just so often is fantastic, and his is one of the best.
Chubbs Peterson.
Yep. In preparation for this, I asked a lot of people, when I say Carl Weathers, what's the first thing you think of? Rocky was very common. Star Wars, his role as Grief Karga, and also a director for the TV show Mandalorian, was pretty common. Predator came up a lot. And also the Adam Sandler's movies, where he played Chubbs. I have not seen those, but it's one more thing we'll talk about. And for me, it was also very much Rocky. Rocky were some of those movies like Star Wars where I don't really remember a time when I hadn't watched them. Interesting also because I go back and I rewatch Rocky, and I think it's a very good movie. I think it's a movie made in a very particular time and place with a very particular class and racial message that's really kind of uncomfortable today. But that Sylvester Stallone himself has been very upfront about, which is part of why he's been very involved in the Creed movies, which is a whole other part of it. But that was where I knew Carl Weathers from, and first knew him, of course, as the villain, and then, of course, the Apollo Creed, but who then comes on to train Rocky in Rocky 3, and goes on to tragically lose his life to Drago in Rocky 4. Exactly. Terribly unfair fight. And one thing I thought was really interesting was when Carl Weathers passed away. I definitely had a moment of well, that's sad, and I am not someone who generally is affected by celebrity deaths. Especially if there's someone who has, for the most part, stopped working. Because in my mind, the death of any human being is sad. But if I have no direct connection to the person, then it's not really something that affects me. Except in so much as, and this is going to sound very self-focused, I don't mean it that way, but, if they are actively creating media that I'm interested in, and now that is not going to keep happening because they've passed away, for example, like with Ray Peterson, who passed away after doing Ahsoka, but was clearly supposed to be in, the next parts of those stories, that's when it hits me a little bit more. And with Carl Weathers, that was definitely the case, because he has been a big part of the cast of Mandalorian, but also, as I said, a director of, I think, some of the better episodes of Mandalorian. But what's interesting to me was seeing so many other people, including people who weren't Star Wars fans, come out and talk about, how sad they were about this. and realizing he's had this very interesting career of, like, I just named a whole bunch of things that he's been in that people really love and remember him from, none of which he was the star of. And, like, he was the star of a couple of movies that I don't think anybody remembers. And I think there's something really interesting about an actor like this who is well known and loved, but not ever for, like, being the headliner. He's always a secondary character, but often either one that is as the antagonist or as the sort of helper to our friend or as just a very important part of the plot, but not necessarily the driver of the plot.
It's interesting with him to start at the beginning of his career because he did play college football for the San Diego Aztecs before playing, I think, professionally for the Raiders.
Yep.
So I can only think of one other person who was like a professional football and then was like famous in acting. We all know who I'm talking about. But it
Brian Boswell, I believe, is his name.
Sure, I was going with O.J. Simpson.
Oh, right.
Sure.
Wow.
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 But you're probably right too. But yeah, it is, it is crazy to think like that's, where he started and then got this. He's just so charming. Like he just seems like a really nice guy. And we know that he is kind of like, I love the feud between him and Stallone that like stretch over a couple decades and that they worked it out. It's just important that they worked it out.
Very much so.
But I love it. The tea.
And it's funny because, there's a lot of professional athletes who then go on to be in movies or TV shows with varying levels of success. You're right, O.J. Simpson, probably the most famous. Brian Bosworth, much near the bottom of that. But a lot of times I think of them as people who are primarily athletes who then, appear on screen, mostly playing themselves. I hadn't realized Carl Weathers not only got a college degree, but he got a master's in theatrical arts from college.
Oh, wow.
And he had always said he wanted to be an actor first and foremost. And apparently John Madden cut him from the Raiders because in Madden's words, he was, quote, too sensitive to play football.
I feel like Madden's cut off for that. That's probably like a low bar to clear. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think we're lucky that Madden cut him because, we got Carl Weathers' career in all these things where he does play, I was looking over IMDb and I was like, oh yeah, he was in Psych. Like he was in an episode of Psych, which like I watched every episode of that show. So like I saw that episode and he's got like one episode in this series, one episode in this series. And he wasn't often like the main star of something, but I think he always really brought something very, his voice is so like strong and rich and carries so much authority and character. And then he also, you can see it's like, oh yeah, of course he was like an athlete. He has this physicality. To just his presence. Like when he's doing stuff, but he doesn't even have to be doing anything. He can just be standing there or sitting there and there's a physicality to his presence that then when he's then running around shooting a blaster or something, it feels just completely believable. And, the Mandalorian was the thing, that most recently, of course, I had seen him in, or the thing that came out most recently. And I actually, in order to do this podcast, I had to make sure to rewatch the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, of course, and get my mom to watch them all.
A great sacrifice on your part.
Deep sacrifice.
Did she like it?
She did. Yeah. She loved
good.
it. Yeah. For the most part. I mean, there's a lot of killing. There's like, so I get some points like, this is very violent.
It's a lot of killing for Disney.
It is. Yeah. But like, I'll just say like Star Wars is something that the original movies and like for most of the series, I think has a real problem with age where they basically always need the hero to be like 20-ish, early 20s. And then like older characters are basically exist to either mentor the main character and then die, or to be the antagonist against the main character and then die. And like, Carl Weathers was like 70 in his 70s when he's doing Mandalorian. And I mean, I was actually surprised. I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. I thought he seemed like maybe in his 50s or something. And not that like seeming younger should be like the main compliment, but like the point being that like, I think his role in that show, I think breaks a lot of expectations about what it means, to be in your 70s and be an actor and be in a Star Wars production, Well,
I will say that I think that also is what made it a little bit more shocking because he did look like, he was doing great. Yeah. And then, so maybe.
Yeah, he was born in 1946, which means that he was, 77 or so when he passed away.
Yeah, he was 76 when he died.
Which is still, if you thought he was in his 50s, it's much more surprising. Obviously people can live far beyond their mid to late 70s, but that's also a much more common age where it's like, okay, it's not surprising someone passes away at that time. And just on the physicality of him, I remember thinking about this especially because actually you brought up the movie Predator. I watched that recently because on the True Story FM podcast network, our parent network, they had done an episode about the movie Predator, and so I decided to rewatch the movie one night, and like, they very intentionally have Carl Weathers in a tank top showing off very large muscles. And
I love it.
I mean, he's up against Schwarzenegger and does not look like a small person. Like, he looks like him and Schwarzenegger train at the same gym and are part of the same military unit. And Schwarzenegger is the biggest guy in the unit, but Weathers definitely looks like he can hold himself pound for pound. I mean, his muscles were like, and they have him in a suit early in the episode, and it's like, some tailor is fixing the seams on the biceps of that suit jacket
how many push-ups
every single day.
Do they do before the handshake?
Yep,
it's my favorite.
That's a high bar to clear to stand next to next to Arnold in a tank top and not look tiny. So
yeah, exactly. Well, let's go through the different things that he's done, and I'll actually start at the beginning. I don't know how much you guys know about these movies, but with the Rocky movies. And first, I think, actually, you said you kind of grew up with them being taught to you as, Philadelphia local history, and then later just serving them. Did you see the movies, or were they just like part of the lexicon?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like Rocky was always the movie that was on around the like holidays. It's almost like, the Super Bowl, there's Rocky, there's the things that happen around that time. And we just, you just watch and watch and watch, and it, it just becomes part of the lifestyle. And then it's like, cause he's the bad guy, but then he comes back as the good guy. And then you're like, oh, you love him. It's funny how easily you can just switch sides from, we don't like this guy to, we love him.
Yeah. What about you, Paul? Were they movies you saw?
So I only have seen the first Rocky movie and the first Creed movie.
Okay.
I think, did I see some like Rocky 7 or 12 or something?
You never saw
5?
Rocky 2? You never saw him win?
I did not.
That's hard to
Yeah, I only saw the first Rocky movie. And I saw it when I was like in my early 20s, I think. Okay. No, definitely. And I was practicing martial arts seriously at the time. And I think it's actually a really good movie, that I think it's not like just like a random sports movie. And I would push back on the word villain. Like, do you think he was a villain or just like the antagonist / rival kind of?
When you're from Philadelphia, anybody who's against your, hometown
right.
is a villain.
Everybody that the Eagles play is a villain.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Look, they booed Santa Claus, okay? Sports fans are pretty tough.
Half their own team are villains.
We just do things that are our own way out here.
Yeah.
I will take back the word villain.
Well, I think Matt is a villain, you said. Or bad guy.
I think, like I said, as someone who watched the movies very early, at a very early age, and like, I would act out the boxing scenes, but have no real idea of like all the levels happening in the movie, and then rewatching it later, in many ways, I think it is his acting as Apollo Creed that really helps to save the movie from not kind of going off the edge that it could. Because I agree with Paul. I think it's a very well made movie. It won the Academy Award for Best Movie, and I think deservedly so. And I mentioned that like some of it's kind of uncomfortable because it is about, a white working class hero taking on the person who's very clearly a Muhammad Ali stand-in. He's very showy, he's very savvy, and I think it's easy to look at the movie and say, oh, this is supposed to be about the great white hero pushing back against, uppity black people. And people who see Rocky that way are definitely in the movie. But I think that one of the key points of it is that Rocky himself is trying to push back against that. And the way Carl Weathers played Apollo Creed really speaks to that, because he does what is clearly a Muhammad Ali, stand-in without it becoming parody and without it becoming blaxploitation satire kind of a thing. He's portrayed as this very savvy businessman and someone who is also, like, even his character, especially in the second movie, is kind of trapped by the expectations of, as a black man, you're supposed to do even better than anyone else. And how could you have this white guy almost beat you and stuff like that? And I'm just really watching it again. I was really impressed with his acting, as it would have been very easy to just throw off zingers and be this beautiful black man, which he very much is. But he really takes the role a lot deeper. And I think I don't think his part is big enough for him to get nominated for anything, but I think he was a very important part of making the movie as good as it was.
Yeah. Well, Stallone put everything that he was into the making of that movie, so every role was cast with intention. And there was a reason that, Carl got that role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, as you said, in later movies, he goes on to be the antagonist again in the second one, and in the third, he comes back to help train our hero after he has defeated Hulk Hogan but lost to Mr. T, proving that the A-Team can beat up professional wrestlers. And there's this great, Eye of the Tiger idea that comes from, that's where Eye of the Tiger comes from, and it's very much about everything has been set up till now in Philadelphia and the gym's there, and this is now about Apollo Creed taking Rocky back to LA, back to his part of the world. And yeah, it's the movies go downhill pretty solidly after the first, but his roles are always a lot of fun.
And I mean, just in terms of the role, like, that's a hard role to pull off, where you have to have the physicality and the athleticism to be able to convincingly look like a professional boxer, and not just professional boxer, but a champion, right? Yeah. And then also have the charisma to, do the kind of like show business kind of side of the role. And, I think that's like a perfect role for him. Yeah. Because he has both of those.
Yeah, because especially when you think of someone being a professional athlete, you're like, oh, okay, this person's going to be a meathead, and that's very much not who he is.
Well, you do have a lot of athletes who just like have that pizzazz thing, and I feel like he could have been one of them. Imagine if he kept going and was like great in a quarterback, he would have that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting because then he plays kind of a similar role in Predator, which I imagine I'm the only one who's seen in the last 10 years.
I watch Predator once a year.
Oh, okay. No, you've seen a lot more than I have.
Yeah, that's I think we've decided in this household that Predator is the best action movie ever made.
I can.
Yeah.
I definitely.
I've never
top
seen
10.
Predator.
I don't know. It is a good movie. It's a very
Ashley looks betrayed, positively, just like deeply stricken.
Oh, I have an episode that we're doing some point over the summer, I think.
Yeah, please don't watch it until
we can talk about it
then.
Okay.
Yeah, I know you're not agreeing.
So you get like an instant,
but you're agreeing to something.
Instant reaction. I like that idea because I've seen Alien vs Predator.
No,
not very good.
That was
not very
the worst
good.
One.
Just really bad. And I have seen like 5 minutes of Predator when it was on somewhere. So
I've never seen Predator.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a horror movie, basically, right? I mean, it's an action movie, but it's a horror movie. The what now?
Did you ever see the Monster Squad? No. Never mind.
No. I mean, I'm familiar with the idea of Predator.
I was just going to say the makeup inspired that much of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say it's an action movie more than a horror movie, but it has some like
it's sci-fi. It's sci-fi. Okay.
Yeah, but in it, what Rhea said is kind of a similar role because Carl Weathers plays again someone who is very clearly like a special forces guy with the same physicality of Schwarzenegger. But the idea is that he's now gone to work for the CIA.
Oh, okay.
And I won't spoil anything in terms of the role he plays, but they kind of tease him about like, oh, you were always the smart one in the team.
Right, right.
And he has the charisma and the responsibility there. And again, he really shines in that role.
Yeah. And I'll say, like, a lot of athletes have charisma, but to be able to pull off your charisma on screen is like another thing. You know,
Right.
like that's a different skill to be able to. I mean, there's some people who might not even have that much charisma person to person, but then like on screen, all of a sudden, you know, they bring out something.
And to not fall into that loop of just, oh, I'm the same person in every movie. I'm just this guy.
Right. I'm just playing myself. It's like, yeah. Or this particular character that's just, you can put them into any movie. It's like, no, this is an actual person here with their own, you know, subtleties and motivations.
And especially with both Apollo Creed and his character in Predator, unfortunately I forget the name of, in many ways it's not even just the charisma, it's the intelligence. Because these are both characters who are thought to be like able to kind of outsmart everybody else and be a couple steps ahead of them in terms of the game.
And I think intelligence is often actually...
Al Dillon. Sorry. That's Al Dillon.
Al Dillon.
I was like, it's right there. I was just like, Matt. It's not Matt Dillon.
Yeah.
That's his. Now, from there, I think we go into the Adam Sandler of it all. And I am not an Adam Sandler fan, so I have not seen those appearances of his. I believe he plays a sort of very aggressive professional golfer.
I would say if you don't like Adam Sandler movies, the one to watch is probably Happy Gilmore.
Okay.
That's the golfing one, right?
Yeah. And if you like golf at all, because it's not him doing like the Billy Madison, like, I'm just doing baby voice and swan and blah, blah, blah. This one actually has a pretty good story. And Carl's great in it. It is very funny.
So who does Carl play? Is he again an antagonist type?
He is like an old golf professional who's going to teach him how to like up his golf game so he can win this tournament to help his grandma who's going to lose her house and he has to make money. Like that's what happy. And he has this just crazy hit. So he can drive the ball, but he's not good on the putting when you get up to the thing. And that's where Carl comes in. So this is Rocky 3, Carl Weathers. It's not Rocky 1. It's all in the hips. Because I know Adam Sandler loves movies to be self-referential and the like, is there a reference to teaching Happy Gilmore The Eye of the Tiger? I don't think so. Okay. I really don't. It's been a minute. Listeners, write it in if I'm wrong. I guarantee, I would bet my house that in some version of a script that line was in there. Maybe Carl Weathers was like, nah, I don't he was all smooth jazz about it. He was like, you know, and then he has this alligator who's after him. It's a whole thing. Nice. And Paul, have you seen it?
I have not. I've watched very few. I was about to say Billy Madison movies. Okay. Yeah. And tell me about him in Arrested Development, because he's playing a version of himself who is kind of, I remember, kind of a little down on his luck and kind of like making money off of being Carl Weathers, but I don't really remember much more. Yeah, so I mean, he plays himself, and I think he's an acting coach for. That's right. It's one of the characters. It's Tobias. Yeah, Tobias Funke. Yeah, because he just is like, he's like, I'm going to make us money back. Yeah, that's Lindsay's husband. Right, mm-hmm. and like he's a very struggling actor and therapist, and he's and yeah, and so like, and then like Carl Weathers will like pop up just like randomly from time to time, and he's like funny and kind of threatening and like and it's one of those things where it's like he's clearly not taking himself too seriously, mm-hmm. It's like the Matt Damon cameo in Entourage or the Keanu Reeves cameo in Always Be My Maybe, where like they're playing like kind of ridiculous versions of themselves. I mean, it's not maybe quite as out there, but it's like within the context of the show, it's just like it pops, in a way. Neil Patrick Harris playing himself, like a parody version of himself in the White Castle movies. Yeah, the White Castle. Will and Kumar go to White Castle movies. Always strikes me. For sure. It's good that it's good when people can laugh at themselves. Very much so. Carl got the role of Apollo Creed because he made fun of Stallone. He criticized his acting in the read through or that led to him getting the role. They're like, oh, we have this like thing that we can work with.
And then like years later, when Stallone was doing the newer one, he asked Weathers, Mr. T, and Dolph Lundgren for permission to use their footage from the appearances in the earlier Rocky movies. Mm-hmm. And Mr. T and Lundgren agreed, but Carl was like, I want a part in the movie. And he's like, but your character's dead. And he's like, I don't care. Like, I want to be in. And Stallone refused. And Weathers decided to not let him use his image for the flashbacks from the previous films. Oh, wow. So they used footage from Fighter, which looks similar to Weathers. But they did patch up their differences. And then Weathers agreed to allow them to use footage for Creed, the 2015 one. Yeah.
Yeah. Because Creed is about Apollo Creed's son.
Right. So you would think... Yeah. You would let it go.
Yeah.
But he was like, no, I want to be back from the dead. And they're like, I can't do that.
You're like, Apollo had a twin brother, and now he's coming to avenge.
See,
his
that's
brother.
Not that hard. See, now you can kind of see where he was coming from.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Now, Ashley, I think of you as one of the people who knows most about the sort of behind the scenes, inside Hollywood tea kind of situations. I know that during the 80s and 90s, Stallone and Schwarzenegger had this big rivalry with each other. Weathers was on screen with both of them. Did he ever take a side in the Stallone-Schwarzenegger debate?
I think that he was just super cool about it. Like, I never heard that he took a side, but he was just friends with everybody. And that's what you got to do. You just have to, and I feel like he kind of rode that through his entire career. Like, nobody ever seemed to have an actual problem with Carl Weathers. Like, he was just the cool guy that everybody liked. And that's what you got to do. In life, in work, you have to find that sweet spot so you could just coast through. I have not figured that out yet. You know?
I would say Paul is very good at that. I very much am not.
I could imagine Paul would be very good at that.
I was going to say that sounds very relatable to me. The kind of like being friends with two people who are mad at each other and seeing both of their perspectives and why each of them is mad at the other and be like, okay, I see where you're coming from, but I also see where they're coming from, but I'm not going to talk too much about their perspective unless I feel like you're in a mood, in a mindset where this might be a good time, you know, and like kind of trying to help people sort of square things away. But like, if that's not where they're at, like, that's okay. We could just be friends, and then I can be friends with this other person. And like, it's okay. It's okay.
It's a useful skill. It is.
It has its place.
One thing that I really love is I looked on his IMDb today, and his movie career began in 1973. And it's just like, and, you know, passing in 2023, it's just this like time capsule of the best of, you know, film, movies, evolving cinema. And he got to be involved with all of it.
Yeah. Like, if you watch that first Rocky movie, it's from 1976, and it is, as I agree with Paul, it's a very good movie. It is a real picture of how much movies have changed in 50 years.
Yes.
I would say the average word per word per minute of dialogue in that movie is half as much as most modern movies today. And granted, it's because like a lot of it is, you know, fight montages and training montages and stuff like that. But also just there's so much said in silences and in looks people give each other, and just these like sweeping shots, you know, of things. And so, yeah, it's just kind of like a trip back of memory lane of how movies used to be made.
Yeah, I mean, it's a half century of, you know, to go from shooting on film in Rocky to, you know, shooting in front of the volume on The Mandalorian, where it's just like it's a totally different process, right? I mean, you're still standing somewhere pretending to be someone you're not, unless you're pretending to be you. It's a different version of you that you're not, but like, you know, so like the core skill is the same, but just like what's surrounding you and the way the process is, you know, the technical side has changed so much, and, you know, the number of scenes or number of shots, you know, per minute or per hour or per movie, you know, has changed dramatically. And personally, I really do enjoy older styles of filmmaking a lot, and enjoy when we see more of that in modern films, you know. I mean, like, speaking of the volume, and, you know, the same director of photography as The Mandalorian, like the Batman, I think has probably a lot fewer scenes per hour, maybe not per movie because it's so long, but, you know, but like just a willingness to kind of like hang on something because it feels like, yeah, this is how long I want this scene to be. Not like, okay, how long do I think someone's attention span is gonna, you know, we need to like go. Mandalorian actually is a little bit of a throwback in that way where, you know, you think about like the episodes aren't that long and so they don't necessarily always hold on things that much. But like if they shot all of those episodes at kind of the pace that a lot of things these days are shot at, like they'd be 15 minutes long.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
You
they
know?
remind me of old 70s spaghetti westerns.
Yes.
And that's what
Yeah.
I love, like the weekly show that everybody would sit
Right.
down and watch. And
Absolutely.
that's what I love about The Mandalorian. And I hope they don't lose that as it just starts to get bigger and bigger.
Definitely true.
Yeah.
Well, and so let's talk about him on The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And what was your thought when you first heard that Carl Weathers was going to be involved with this project?
Kind of like everything else, I'm like, oh, it's adorable. Yay. You know, because you just like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I didn't hear that he was going to be involved in it. I just saw him on it, you know, because that's sort of how I do. But
That is how you do.
yeah. But like from the first episode, you know, I thought he was great. And then actually he played a pivotal role in me really getting through The Mandalorian and getting to like one of the favorite Star Wars episodes of anything, like even like Andor, withstanding Andor, like, you know, because when we were covering that season 2, right? And I kind of like did some episodes and not some episodes. And I wasn't really sold on the show in season 2. And then like that 4th episode, just like, I felt like, I mean, collectively, but like he was the director and he was one of the main characters, one of the drivers of the plot. It just recaptured the, like, A New Hope, like, the vibe, the feeling, the essence of, like, OG Star Wars, you know, in a way that just, like, brought me right back in, you know, and he was a huge part of that.
Yeah. I want to talk about him in Star Wars for a second. I want to talk about him in Mandalorian in a second, but I just want to say first, one of the things that I realized that I hadn't really thought about much since I was a kid, but was kind of reminded of when I heard that he was going to be in this. I think I saw him in a preview. And this is kind of a self-admittance of something that was not great, but I think it's kind of an illustration of how these things work in our world. You know, as a young kid, I wasn't exposed to a lot of black people in TV and movies and stuff like that. And the two things I was watching more than anything were Rocky and Star Wars. And I thought that Carl Weathers and Billy D. Williams were the same person.
So that's a big thing in our household, and I'm really glad that you brought it up because I didn't know how to approach it. Katie and I have been under scrutiny for a very long time for our husbands because we do this all the time. And I was raised with Carl Weathers, and I still do it.
Yeah.
It's the mustache. It's because, and I know, no, there's no excuse for it. No. It just happens.
Yeah, and I think I was probably around like 10 or 12 when I realized I'd been doing it, but just, you know, again, the way race plays out is something that happened, and so there's in some way in my head, like having Carl Weathers be in Star Wars was like, this feels right. You know, I always thought he was before. He's a different person. This is good. And yeah, I'm glad other people had that confusion. You know, I think it's again sign of how, you know. I
got a text that said, "Oh no, Billy D. Williams passed away." Because
it still happens today. Yeah.
No. Because
it was a joke
was making fun
at your
of me.
expense.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yes.
Got it. Yep. That makes sense. Makes sense.
And I was like, you can just go beep right on. You know, I was
you
like,
could just go John yourself.
Damn. You can go shove yourself right in a John.
Yep. They are two different Johns, two different actors. But yeah, so it just felt good. And I agree with you, Paul. We'll get even in the second season for sure, but even in the first season, he really feels like the moral heart of the show because he is the person who is, you know, he's the closest representative of the world that Mando is leaving behind.
Still didn't trust him. I still didn't trust him. You don't trust him in the beginning though, because you know if you're a Philly person.
You know he's going to backstab someone, but he is.
But he didn't.
You know, he's just part of the guild. He's part of the, you know, he wants Mando to come back to the guild and then has to send people after Mando. And, you know, he hates doing it. But then, and then even that, in the final episodes of the first season, I don't believe he's on the up and up.
Because he wasn't.
But he wasn't.
He was going to betray him, and then he got, scratched by a dragon and healed by a Grogu.
It's because he basically had the same thing that Mando had. Mando was not planning to save this child until it was super cute.
Yeah.
I still think it put a spell on him.
Right. Yeah, it did a little old Jedi mind trick.
You will take care of me. Man.
Yes.
Yes. But I just love how he becomes, therefore, a part of the team, and then he's part of the breakout. And yeah, you're right. In season 2, he continues to be a major part of the show.
And season 3 as well, which I did not rewatch because, just reasons. But Just because.
Yeah. And I felt like I had enjoyed his characters and the other stuff. I had never seen the emotional range, though, from him that I saw in Mandalorian. He's not just good at being a happy-go-lucky, intelligent businessman kind of, or sneaky operative kind of person. In this, he had real grief. He had real, ups and downs and things like that. And I...
grief.
Well, yeah, exactly. And it just, I think one thing that can be hard when you take someone who is very known for a certain kind of thing and put him into another, the first couple times I saw Patrick Stewart in other things, it was very weird to me, because to me, he's first and foremost a Starfleet captain. And I get over it eventually, but and Carl Weathers, he seemed like such a product of the 80s and of that kind of, action movie thing.
Right.
But he fit perfectly into Star Wars in a way that I just...
Well, because that's a 70s, 80s kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if you're from there, you just kind of fit right in. And everyone's like, oh!
But I think if Schwarzenegger showed up, or Stallone showed up, or some other...
They peppered Stallone in Guardians of the Galaxy. It was kind of the same thing.
That to me is an example. I liked Stallone's character, but he always felt super wrong to me. It always was that's not an MCU actor. That's Stallone doing a cameo in the Guardians.
Yeah, I agree.
There are people who tend to pop out of whatever they're in and just feel if you put Tom Cruise in a period piece, it feels weird.
Yes. I think that's a great example.
Not just because having him be the main character of The Last Samurai is a choice.
There's The Last Samurai. Yeah. And then he was great as that blonde vampire.
He played Lestat, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I know
he was, but he still, to me, he still feels of this era. Yeah, or maybe the 20, 30, 40 years ago era. But there's a feeling to him that feels I feel like some people feel like they're of their time. And then there's some people who feel timeless, and then maybe there's some people who feel like they're not in the right time, but I just feel like there's certain actors, who just feels you can plop them in certain periods, and it's I can see that person being in Victorian England, totally. Or being in, I haven't seen The Great Wall, another Curious Choice, movie, but I feel like Matt Damon and Willem, and Willem Dafoe, I'm I actually really want to see it now, and I have a lot of thoughts on it. But
I've never laughed so hard.
You've seen it?
Yeah.
It just
I could watch it for free, stolen off the internet.
Yeah. I feel like just. And granted, the most recent Dunkin' Donuts ad does not help this.
No.
My brain will automatically add a Boston accent to anything I see Matt Damon in today.
I'm sorry about the donuts. He was like, I'm so sorry. I appreciate. I laughed. I did laugh at the end.
I rewatched The Martian recently and kept thinking something was off with my sound until I realized, no, he's just not doing the Boston accent.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Boston accent is very Star Wars. Right, we have Cliff from Cheers.
That's true. I feel like Bill Burr was kind of doing one.
Yeah, a little bit, and we have Donnie Yen, who has a Boston / Hong Kong accent. He lives on the other side of the planet where all the Boston.
He's where the brown coats are.
Yeah.
I like it. Anything else you want to say about Weathers in Mandalorian, or just Weathers in general?
I'm just glad that I got to live in the same world as him. I got to see his art and enjoy it. And we'll get to, like I said, we watch Predator at least once a year. It's our favorite. And we watch Rocky all the time. But Predator probably a little bit more. It is our favorite action movie, and will be until the day I die. And I hope I can pass that off to some child so that they continue it. Not mine, but
Not yours. Yeah, somebody else's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say, like, I'd like to thank him for helping save The Mandalorian for me because, you know, I just got to, like, re-experience the end of that season for the second time, you know, like through someone else's eyes, you know, if you're like, wait, that's not is that Luke Skywalker?
Did he direct that one? It was the Siege,
No, he didn't direct that one. He directed, The Siege, episode 4.
The one before, okay.
Yeah. But, you know, between his directorial talents and his, you know, I mean, it wasn't specifically his role in that. It was that whole episode, but it, you know, it brought me back into something that I love, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in Predator. And, you know, I didn't rewatch, Arrested Development before this, and so I didn't have as many specifics to say about it, but like, I do look forward to seeing that again and remembering his performances in that.
Yeah, I think maybe sometime when the three of us can be physically in the same place, we could watch The Predator, and then just throw a microphone in between us and talk about it, because I'd love to get Paul's reactions to it.
You said you're going to be here in like 3 weeks. So figure that out.
Possible. All right. Well, yeah, I think I just echo both of you. You know, I'm sure they'll figure out something to do with his character from Mandalorian season 4. He wasn't, you know, super essential to a lot of the plot, but I really liked where he was going in terms of becoming the mayor and, you know, having really settled down. And again, I don't want to compare him to Lando Calrissian necessarily as the two black people in Star Wars until we get to the sequels, but I had kind of loved the idea that he'd also, you know, gone respectable, and, you know, I'm sorry you won't get to see more of that. And I'm especially kind of sorry that, to my understanding, he hadn't done much directing until very recently, and I think it's kind of a shame that he did a good job at directing these episodes, and I would have loved to see him more both in front of and behind the camera. So, you know, when someone passes away in their 70s, I don't think I can say it's like a tragic thing. You know, I of course have great sympathy for his family. I think he had a life very well lived, but I think we'll definitely miss him, and just really glad we got to get together and talk about some of the great things he's done, and you know, be sad about the fact that we won't get to see more of him.
Yeah.
I mean, I still see it as a tragedy. I understand, like, the sort of difference, whatever. Like, these days, like, I don't know. I feel like people should live to 100. Like, give like a century.
Listen, I don't know.
Not everybody wants to. If you don't want to, you can opt out.
I can't even get up, and I'm like,
yeah, but see, that doesn't have to be the way it is. Like, that's not a necessity, you know. And I mean, people can be very healthy and be, you know, in action series into their 70s and probably 80s, and, you know, but I just wanted to say, like, he does have 17 directing credits if you want to go back and watch, like, Silk Stockings. And
is that like a sexy one?
Yeah, I think so. That's a TV series. That's like a Skinamax, I think.
Oh my God!
No.
Did he direct a Skinamax?
Am I wrong?
Hold on.
Do you know about
a little bit more respectful than that.
He did 8 episodes.
It was on USA when I was about 13, so I do remember it well.
After Dark?
It was a buddy cop, like, TV procedural about two cops who would investigate murders among, like, the Hollywood, you know, so it was always, like, sexy starlets getting killed.
Silk
and
stockings.
Wow.
Yeah, finding
Two dudes were the lead of Silk Stockings?
No, a guy and a woman.
Oh, okay, good.
It was very much
Did they have a will they, won't they relationship?
Oh, of course. Well, of course they did.
Just breathing in each other's mouths.
Or a will they and will they. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
He also directed an episode of Hawaii Five-0, the new one, Law and Order, you know, FBI.
Awesome.
So yeah, there's some directorial credits you can investigate.
Well, I would imagine that they weren't just like, oh, you've never directed anything. Here's these Panavision and whatever. Like, just go to in Star Wars.
Right.
Yeah, show me a short film, something.
But then again, if I was a young and upcoming, like, producer at Disney and Carl Weathers is in front of me, I'd be like, you can do whatever you want. I'm in charge and you're my idol. Let's go balls to the wall. You want to direct? Yeah, he's directing now. You know?
I think Filoni hadn't done any live action, right? Before he directed.
No, I don't think so. They had George Lucas call him and be like, you're going to be in charge of everything Star Wars. And he was like, I think I had a stroke.
Yeah.
Could you imagine? No.
Yeah.
No,
But
I could have, like, Kevin Feige call me and be like, you know what? You're going to head up our X-Men development crew and you're going to tell us what we should and shouldn't do. I would fall out of my own body.
Yeah. Someday Disney is going to have someone take over some part of the Marvel Star Wars universe whose name doesn't begin with an F, and it's going to be the end of an era.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. For more of Paul's stuff, check out Zen Madman and all the places. The links are in the show notes. But Ashley, you haven't been on in a little while, and you are a very busy podcastrix.
Busy little bee.
Out there. Where can people find you?
You can find me at Bill and Ashley's Terror Theater for all things horror. If you're into how horror movies get made to the end of, production, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, where we're talking about all things Marvel and everything on the Stranded Panda Network.
Yeah, definitely check out all that. I have not been following all of the Marvel stuff these days, but Echo, for my own personal reasons, as I talked about a lot on my own other podcast. Oh, this podcast. Never mind.
This podcast on this very podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Let me start that again. Yeah, definitely check those podcasts out. I'm not a horror fan, but Bill and Ashley make me love horror movies through their descriptions, and they do it in a way that I think if you've seen the movie, you're going to love it. But when I have no idea what the movie is, they still describe it enough that I can go along on the journey with them. But especially the MCU cast, it's the podcast that inspired me to get started. Matt and Jeff were already so good, but it got so much better when Ashley, you came on. And Echo is probably the most important media that's ever come out in my life for me personally because of the disability representation, specifically of me as a prosthetic user. You probably heard my own episodes about it on this show, but they did fantastic episode by episode coverage. Definitely worth checking out. So please check out all those things. Check out Zen Madman. We're going to have some bonus content for you about other sports stars who've become professional athletes and things like that. You can check all that out if you're a member, just $5 a month, $55 a year. Bonus content, ad-free content, and a great way to support this podcast. So please stick around if you're a member. For everybody else, thank you so much. We have spoken.
This is the way.
Bye.